Kiddushin 74b. This is what the Mishnah is saying. All those for whom it is prohibited to enter into the congregation of the priesthood. Rabbi Yehuda adds, parenthetically, and who are they? Even a female who became a convert at less than 3 years old and 1 day, and this is not in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, who holds that such a girl is permitted to marry a priest. Rabbi Yehuda resumes his presentation of the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. They are permitted to marry into those families that are prohibited from entering into the congregation, but are permitted to marry one another. The Gemara asks, and let us establish the Mishnah as referring to a girl who became a convert at 3 years and 1 day old or older, and then it will accord even with Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai's opinion, as he agrees that this convert may not marry a priest. The Gemara answers, if so, the Mishnah is broken, in other words, contradicted from within itself, and as if the Mishnah states that even a female who converted when she was older than 3 years and a day may marry one with flawed lineage. One would make an incorrect inference as follows. Rather, the reason that she may marry one with flawed lineage is that she converted when she was already 3 years and 1 day old. But if she converted when she was less than 3 years and 1 day old, as she is permitted to enter into the congregation of the priesthood, is she prohibited from marrying into those families that are prohibited from entering into the congregation, but permitted to marry one another? This cannot be, since according to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, there is also the case of a female who converted when she was less than 3 years old, 1 day old, who is permitted to enter the congregation of the priesthood and is also permitted to marry into those families that are prohibited from entering into the congregation but are permitted to marry one another. Consequently, the Mishnah cannot be explained to accord with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. The Gemara continues to ask, but is it an established principle that all those for whom it is prohibited to enter into the congregation of the priesthood are permitted to marry into those families that are prohibited from entering into the congregation but are permitted to marry one another? But a widow who may not marry a high priest and divorcee, and a woman disqualified from marrying a priest, a halala, and a woman who has engaged in sexual intercourse with a man forbidden to her by the Torah, a zona, are prohibited to enter into the congregation of the priesthood, and are also prohibited to marry into those families that are prohibited from entering into the congregation, but are permitted to marry one another. And furthermore, it can be inferred, but one who is permitted to enter into the congregation of the priesthood is prohibited from marrying a man of flawed lineage. But there is the convert who is permitted to marry a daughter of a priest, and is also permitted to marry a mamzeret. Rather, Rav Natan bar Hoshaya said, this is what the Tana of the Mishnah is saying. Any person about whom the halacha is that a priest may not marry his daughter, Rav Natan bar Hoshaya adds, parenthetically, and who is that? A convert who married a female convert, and this is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who prohibits the daughter of two converts to marry a priest. Rav Nasan bar Hoshea resumes his presentation of the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. People of that status are permitted to marry into one of those families that are prohibited from entering into the congregation, but are permitted to marry one another, since converts are not in the category of congregation. The Gemara asks, but it is an established principle that anyone whose daughter of a priest may not marry is prohibited to marry into those families that are prohibited from entering into the kingdom but are permitted to marry one another. But there is a case of a priest disqualified due to a flawed lineage, a halal, who married a Jewish woman as a priest may not marry his daughter, since she is a halala, and despite this, she is included among those who are prohibited to marry into those families that are prohibited from entering into the congregation, but are permitted to marry one another. The Gemara answers, this is not difficult, since the Mishnah is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Dostai ben Yehuda, who holds that the daughter of a halal and a Jewish woman may marry a priest. The Gemara asks, but there is the case of a halal who married a halala as a priest may not marry his daughter, since she is a halala. Despite this, she is included among those who are prohibited to marry into those families that are prohibited from entering into the congregation, but are permitted to marry one another. And furthermore, it can be inferred, one with regard to whom it is permitted for a priest to marry a daughter, he prohibited from marrying Jews of flawed lineage, but there is the case of a convert who married a Jewish woman, and a priest is permitted to marry his daughter, and despite this, people of that status are permitted to marry into those families that are prohibited from entering into the congregation, but are permitted to marry one another. Rather, Rav Nachman said that Rabba bar Avu said a different explanation of the dispute between the first Tana and Rav Yehuda. Here, the difference between them concerns a mamzer resulting from intercourse between a man and his sister, and a mamzer resulting from intercourse between a married woman and a man other than her husband. The first Tana holds even a mamzer resulting from intercourse between a man and his sister is also considered a mamzer. Rabbi Yehuda holds the offspring resulting from intercourse with a married woman is a mamzer, but offspring resulting from intercourse between a man and his sister is not a mamzer. According to this explanation, the dispute that according to the first Tana, offspring resulting from intercourse between siblings may marry offspring resulting from intercourse with a married woman, while according to Rav Yehuda, the offspring resulting from an intercourse between siblings is of unflawed lineage and may not marry a mamzer. The Gemara asks, what is the Tana teaching us with this? We already learned this in a Mishnah in Yevamos 49a, who is a mamzer, any offspring who is born of a union between prohibited by the verse, and he shall not enter, Deuteronomy 23:2. In other words, if the union was a violation of any kind of prohibition, even that of a prohibition that is not subject to the punishment of kares, the child is a mamzer. This is the statement of Rabbi Akiva. The Mishnah continues, Shimon HaTimni says, any offspring who is born of a union enjoined by prohibition, for which one is liable to receive kares at the hand of heaven, and the halacha is in accordance with his statement. Rabbi Yehoshua says, any offspring who is born of a union enjoined by a prohibition, for which one is liable to receive court-imposed capital punishment. This demonstrates the question of whether mamzer status results from sexual intercourse between siblings, or for which one is liable to receive kares rather than the capital punishment. He has already been addressed in the Mishnah. Therefore, Yehuda's explanation of this Mishnah must be rejected. Rather, Rava said the difference between them involves the halacha of a male Ammonite and a male Moabite convert. And this is what the Tana is saying. All those for whom it is prohibited to enter into the congregation, Rava adds parenthetically, and what are they? A male Ammonite and a male Moabite convert. Rava resumes his presentation of the statement of Rabbi Yehuda, they are permitted to marry one another. The Gemara asks, if so, what is the reason of Rabbi Yehuda for prohibiting these marriages? Rabbi Yehuda should also permit an Ammonite convert to marry a mamzeret. An Ammonite is not fit to the entire congregation. The Gemara answers, this is what the Tana is saying. Although Rabbi Yehuda generally prohibits a convert from marrying a mamzeret, this matter applies only to a regular convert who is fit to enter into the congregation. But a male Ammonite convert and a male Moabite convert who are not fit to enter into the congregation are not prohibited from marrying a mamzeret, and there is no dispute between Rabbi Yehuda and the first Tana. The sages taught in Tosefta, Yevamot 8:1, a boy 9 years and 1 day old whose sexual intercourse is considered an act of intercourse with regard to sexual transgressions, who is an Ammonite or a Moabite convert, or an Egyptian or an Edomite convert, or a Samaritan, or a Gibeonite, or Chol, or a Mamzer, who engaged in sexual intercourse with the daughter of a priest, or the daughter of a Levite, or an Israelite woman, has thereby disqualified her from the priesthood. Rabbi Yossi says, anyone whose offspring is unfit to marry a priest disqualifies a woman with whom he engages in intercourse from marrying a priest. And anyone whose offspring is not unfit does not disqualify her. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says,